الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In this video, we are going to explain the states and the steps for the first project of the UI Path Professional Certification Preparation. So this is a program using the Robotic Enterprise Framework to calculate the client security hash and working according to this process design document here, starting from 1.1 till 1.6. Okay, let's come here to our program. Let's check first here the first initialization. Here everything as default. First of all, to assign system exception as nothing, and then a first run, then init all settings, and inside init all settings here also the default here. I needed to loop through each configuration sheet and save it in a dictionary variable. So the arguments from here, input argument will be in config file for this, and the sheets here for config sheet are settings and constants. And let's check here our config file. We have the settings, this the orchestrator queue name, and I put the queue name here. This is the main folder, and this is the dispatcher folder. Here the main folder has no machines, machine 0, because I will run my process from inside this folder. So I have this machine 1, and I put the queues and the assets for the whole project here in the parent folder, assets 1 and the queues 1, and this is my queue name, and here is the assets for the login assets. So I put the names here in the config file, orchestrator queue folder, and login assets here as well. And in the constants, I have added those constants, argument for integer number of retries for the retry, and the time span for the retry interval. And here to put this one, first of all, we use this and then write the number. Okay, and here is an array that contains some strings for the name of the application to be closed in the kill or process state, and then we're in the process state and the kill or process work frame, and this is the process folder path, and here is my asset here. I put my asset in the settings here, login assets. Okay, and let's come back to our program. So after getting the sheet for config file here, we'll save the output to data table string and constants, and then I will loop through this data table and check if the column here, for example, here column is null or doesn't have any value. So I checked it here. If configuration row is not empty, this is the condition. All of them are the same as default. Okay, let's start here our program from init all application. This is the workflow which I have integrated some of the initialized applications workflow. First of all, get credential login assets will output the string username and the string secure string password, and this is the credential asset name, and this is the credential folder path. You can even pass it using the in-config file, and then here to assign the value of the input config file using the configuration file for the number of retries, and as well here the parse of the to convert from the time span to string. Here I'll use the parse method, and then opening one acme. Here the arguments here, integer number of retries and time span retriever number, and as well here the second one for the login I will input the arguments for the username and password and save the values in these variables, and as well for the time span. The last thing here in the visualization to just click the open work items table page, and that's it. I've finished the first state here, which is initialization. So here in the initialization, in the transitions, we have if there is system exception, it will end process, and this end process will invoke close all applications. And if the condition is so successful means that it will go to the upload transaction data page. If the system exception is nothing, then it will go to the upload transaction data. And here as well, check the stop signal which is coming from the orchestrator. If it is stop signal, then if it is stop, it will stop and end process and put the transaction item nothing is default. Else I will upload the transaction data. So let's open this page here, the arguments. From this page I will input the config file, and there is no variable here. So what is done here is to assign first of all the integer number of tries and tries interval, and then we'll open the extract work item number 5 table, and here this page it will output the data table as an argument, and will take two entry or two inputs arguments for the retry. So all, all I need here is to extract the data table and then configure the filter for only work item number 5 here to contains work item number 5, and then log message and then close the application. Okay, and then after this I will upload the work item in the orchestrator. Here in this file I will enter the data table which I have already extracted from the previous workflow, and then will assign to this variable, and as well the config file will assign the config. Let's open the workflow here for the upload work item in queues. Here for the input data table I will look through for each row in data table, and then I will use to assign the dict items and the string reference. This variable will contain the reference for each queue item, and this variable will contain a dictionary for all the needed columns from the queue item. And then we'll get queue item and we'll pass for it my folder, my orchestrator queue folder, and as well here my orchestrator queue name, and will output from this. For sure I will assign the reference here, my variable string reference, and the output from here will be queue items. So I will check if this queue items greater than 0, it means that this queue is already in the queue, so I will log the message, and else it will add the queue items. And as well here the orchestrator queue folder and the orchestrator queue name, and then I will log message to end this workflow. Okay, so we have finished the next second step, which is uploading the transaction item, extracting, let's see, it is extracting and uploading the transaction item. If it is successful, if there is some exception, so it will end the process. If it is successful, so I will get the transaction data, and actually it's very simple here. Easy to import the invoke the get transaction data, and this get transaction data here have 7 arguments. The first important one is our transaction item, and this are all the other one default. Okay, and then after this I will go to the process transaction. Here in the process transaction I integrated some of my workflows here. The first, here I will invoke the process workflow, and inside the process workflow I will integrate all my uh, project workflows for each item or each current row. And then after that I will set the transaction to success, and as well this is the default for the framework. Here everything is as default, and here inside the open the invoke process I will just close those other pages. So inside the process here my arguments is in transaction item and in config file, and the variables I needed the variable to assign it for the input and output arguments. So let's start it from the beginning. There are 4 files, 5 files. Yes. The first thing here is to log message. This process is starting, and then to assign the value of the variables of the retry. We have done it before many times. And then starting process 15A, and this process what it will do, it will take the end transaction item and will output to string update work URL and string WID URL, and as well it is only one activity which is an assign to assign in transaction item to specific content of WID, a string WID number, and then the URL, as we concatenate this with the URL. And the last one is the update work page URL. So I will output those 2 arguments. Okay, here the first one I will output the string update URL and string WID URL. And then I will take the open the detailed page here. I will take this input, this output from the last previous one as an input argument here, string WID URL, and as well I will input those for the retry, and then I need output for the client country, the client name, and the client ID. So what will be done here in this workflow? Very simple as well, using the past input URL and then get text the client ID, and I will save it into argument output string client ID, and the same for the client name and the client country here, and this is the end log message. And then after that I will open one 5C, and it has the input string client ID and the input country and the input name, and it will output the string security hash code, which I'll use it to input here in the this end security cache for the last one updated page, and as well I will need the update work item URL which has already set. To check 15D here as well, I will pass